for a few years, but we decided that we wanted to have children sooner rather than later. So we tried every trick in the book, but no matter what we tried, we could not get pregnant. And after a while, we started to get discouraged. But then, one day, the test came back positive. It was the best day of my life. We were so excited, we called everyone we knew to tell them the good news. We were going to be parents. But then, the pain started. It was slight at first, but as the day progressed, it got worse until my husband decided to rush me to the hospital. But it was too late. We lost the baby that night. And then the doctor came and told us that I would never be able to have children. I was so devastated. How could this be happening to me? I was a good person. And I thought that I would make a great mother. From there, things only got worse. You see, I was a counselor at a high school, and I counseled kids all day long who I saw would come in and be abused or abandoned by the parents. How were they allowed to be parents when I wasn't? What kind of world is this? After a while, I began to just fade away. My husband and I weren't getting along. My job just made me so angry. I isolated myself from everyone around me. Why, I even resented mothers at the grocery store when I would see them with their babies, their happy little families. I was so alone. I was so lost. I had hit rock bottom. And I was seriously considering quitting my job when a coworker, a teacher friend of mine who had just recently gone through a divorce, came and asked me over for dinner. Well, because she had children, I knew I didn't want to go. Just couldn't see her there with her children. It was going to hurt so much. But somehow she convinced me to come anyway, so I went. To my surprise, the kids weren't there. Thank God. It was just her and me. And dinner was really nice, and it felt so good to have some company, you know? And then she asked me a question. One that I just wasn't prepared to answer. She asked me how I was doing. It's a pretty simple question, you know, but no one had ever asked me that before. And so, for some reason, I told her everything. I poured my whole heart out to her, all of my anger, all of my fear, all of my pain. And she just listened to me. When we were done, she hugged me and she said to me, God had a plan for my life, and that He'll reveal that to me in His own time. I believed in God and all, but I don't think I believed that He had much influence on my life. But that view was about to change over the next several weeks. She showed me the love of God, and she told me all the time that she was praying for me. And one day I asked her, why was she so concerned about me and my life? And she said to me that it was because God loved me, and that meant that she loved me too. I became a true believer that night, and I will never forget what she did for me. Thank you for saving me. And now I can share the love of Christ with others as well.
Teenager is hard enough without going through what I had to go through. I was the youngest of 4 kids, but by the time that I was 16, it was just me and my sister left in the house. Of course, she was going to be 18 in a couple of weeks, and then she'd be gone too. I begged her to take me with her, but just like all of my other siblings had, she told me to make my own way. Our mother had died when I was 8, and our father, well, he was a drunk. He was a pretty mean guy when he was sober. But when he drank, he became a monster. He used to beat us kids. He'd scream at us. He locked us out of the house in the middle of winter. I turned to drugs to try to escape. When my sister moved out, all of that anger and abuse came directed at me. The drugs didn't help. They just dulled the pain. Then I turned to cutting. The first time was an accident. My father had had one of his fits, and he was throwing all sorts of things at me. When he finally relented and went into the living room, I was left to pick up the pieces, like usual. While picking up a piece of a broken so jar, I cut myself, and I expected to scream out in pain, but instead, a strange euphoria came over me. It was better than any drug I'd ever tried before. It gave me control of something in my life, but it didn't make him stop. It didn't fix anything. My senior year of high school, my father had his worst fit yet. He threw me against the wall, he punched me, he broke my teeth, he bruised the whole left side of my face. There was no hiding that damage. The next day at school, the counselor saw me, and she called me into her office. That day when I got home, the police were there taking my father away. They told me that none of my siblings wanted me, and I was going to have to go into foster care. I was going to be 18 in like 9 months. Why couldn't I take care of myself? I practically had been in the past couple of years anyway. But despite my protests, they took me away. Sure, it wasn't much, but that home was all that I'd ever known. To my surprise, they took me to stay with my counselor from school. She didn't have any kids, so it was just her and her husband. And, well, they were kind of goody-two-shoes type people, and I knew that I didn't belong there with them. Sooner or later, they were going to realize that too, and I'd be all alone again. Over the next several months, I did everything that I could to make their lives miserable. I stole things, I snuck out of the house at all hours of the night, I even brought drugs into their home. But no matter what I did, she never gave up on me. And some part of me actually liked living there with those people. But then one night we had a fight, and I said some awful things. I thought for sure they were going to kick me out now. I was going to be all alone. That night, I cut myself too deep. And I must have passed out because the next thing that I remember is waking up in the hospital, expecting to be all alone. But instead, there she was, sitting there crying and praying. And when she saw that I was awake, she rushed to me and she hugged me. She hugged me. How could she still care for me after what I had done to her, after what I had said? I asked her that, and she told me God would love me no matter what I did, and that she was going to love me no matter what I did. She saved my life that day in more ways than one. Thank you. Thank you.
The feast of Easter, it's passion. Passion of a God willing to sacrifice his own Son to make a way for us to get through our sins. Passion of his Son Jesus to endure the cross and everything associated because of his great love for us. Passion of God's children for a God who loved them so much. And finally, an extravagant love that boils over and just flows freely in this world. There's no stopping that kind of passion. It's been 2,000 years, and that kind of passion still flows through the world, and it flows through us. As we think about Easter, as we go away from here, back to our homes and our lives, let's take that passion with us. Let's make a difference in the world for the one who made a difference for us.